How many of you have ever let someone borrow something only to not have it returned on time? I'm going to tell you a little make-believe story about a guy named Bob. Bob's the guy that has all the tools that you could possibly need for any and every project. Bob had a neighbor named Jim. And one day Jim came over to Bob and said, "Bob, my lawnmower has broken. Is there any chance I could borrow your lawnmower?" And Bob said, "Absolutely, Jim. I'd be happy to loan it to you. Now, here's what I need you to do, though. You have to return it to me tomorrow night." Jim said, "Bob, you are a lifesaver. I will absolutely have it here tomorrow night." Well, the next day comes, the next evening comes, and there's no Jim, and there's no lawnmower. Bob thought, maybe he got a little busy. We'll give it some more time. Well, another day goes by, another day, and before you know it, we're at a week. Well, Bob goes to Jim and says, "Jim, you haven't returned my lawnmower." And he's like, "Oh, Bob, I totally forgot. We just got so busy, the kids and my work, and we were doing a little traveling. Hey, I will get it back to you tomorrow night." The next night comes, still no lawnmower, still no Jim. This happens over and over. Eventually, Bob's trying to figure out a way. How can I get the point across that I really want this lawnmower back right now? Because Jim has crossed a boundary. So Bob throws a party for the entire neighborhood. He does a barbecue, and Jim is invited to the party. During this party, he says to everyone, "Listen, I know a lot of you like to borrow tools from me." And he's like, "So here's what I've started. I've started Bob's Tool Library. That means that you can come in, that you can check out any tool, and you just have to sign here. But what you're signing is actually that you are agreeing to bring it back on time. And if you do not, there's a consequence that you will have to pay." Well, remember, Jim is there, and Jim is hearing this, and he kind of sheepishly says, "What's the consequence?" So Jim pulls out a sign in front of everybody, and it says, "Tools not returned on time mean that you have to mow my lawn for a month." Everybody started laughing. Jim gets up and he says, "Bob, I will go get that lawnmower right now." And Bob ended up not having to mow his lawn for the rest of the summer. You see, Bob wanted to put out his boundaries. He wanted to let Jim know, "Hey, this is the boundary, and this line has been crossed, and now you need to come back within the boundaries." Now, boundaries can be used for a lot of things. Boundaries can be used to mark or to limit. They can be used to divide between different areas, concepts, or behaviors. Boundaries can be geographical. They can be rivers or mountain ranges that separate states or even countries. Boundaries can be man-made. There are lines that are painted on the road that show that we are supposed to drive between these lines. Boundaries can be personal. Maybe you've set a certain amount of time for your family every week. Maybe you've set a certain amount of time to exercise every week, and you won't cross these boundaries. These are special times for you. Maybe you have boundaries. If you're a sports person, there are boundaries. There's rules to the game. There's rules that help the game happen. Now, a lot of people, when we think about boundaries, we think about things that actually limit us. But what I want to get across to you today is that boundaries actually free us. Boundaries can actually be a blessing. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 5 today. And this is where Jesus is doing the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus has people there, and he is teaching and teaching and teaching. He is giving truths that we still talk about 2,000 years later. And he's talking to the people that day, and he gets to verse 33, and that's where we're going to pick up the story. "You've also heard that our ancestors were told, 'You must not break your vows. You must carry out the vows you make to the Lord.' But I say, do not make any vows. Do not say, 'By heaven,' because heaven is God's throne. And do not say, 'By the earth,' because the earth is his footstool. And do not say, 'By Jerusalem,' for Jerusalem is the city of the great king. Do not even say, 'By my head,' for you can't turn one hair white or black. Just say a simple, yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. So here's the problem. Humanity has an inclination to lie. When God was giving Moses the 10 commandments in the Old Testament, he even put this in there. Do not lie. Because here's what happens. We will twist, we will manipulate, we will, do whatever we need to with our words to make things sound the way that it should. We won't tell the full truth. And here's what's happening in these verses. Jesus is trying to help the people understand your word should be yes or no. Your word needs to be your bond. Because what was happening is people were taking these oaths and they were swearing by Jerusalem. They were swearing by earth. They were swearing by heaven. There was two different kinds of oaths in the ancient Jewish culture. There was a binding oath and a non-binding oath. A binding oath is where someone invoked the Lord to be part of that oath. You were inviting God to be part of that promise. But what you are also doing is that you are inviting condemnation on if you do not live up to that promise. Then there are non-binding oaths. Non-binding oaths are those oaths that, hey, you still want it to sound important. You still want it to have some weight behind it. So you swear on something else that's bigger than yourself. So I swear by heaven. I swear by earth. I swear by Jerusalem. But the problem with this is there's not any weight behind it. Why do you have to swear by something else? Your word should be your word. This is like a little kid whose mom, has baked a fresh batch of cookies, puts it on the counter, and tells that little kid, you cannot eat any cookies until after dinner. And the little kid looks at mom and says, okay, mom, I won't eat any cookies. Well, mom goes away, for 15 minutes working on something, comes back and sees chocolate all over the kid's face and says, you told me you were not going to eat any cookies. And the kid goes, well, mom, I had my fingers crossed, so it didn't mean anything. This is what we try to do. We try to create loopholes so that we can actually do or get what we want or not have to live up to what we have said. Jesus is saying, make a statement and stand by it. You shouldn't have to swear upon something else. You shouldn't have to invoke the name of the earth, the name of Jerusalem or heaven. We often do this even today. Maybe you've heard kids say this, I cross my heart and I hope to die. I put 1,000 needles in my eye. Or, maybe I swear on my mom that I won't do that. We come up with all these different things. Why do we have to do that? It's because we have a history of not being people of our word. If you have to be a person who swears or makes oaths on something else, what it actually is showing is that there is a weakness in your words. There's a weakness in your integrity, meaning that you don't always live up to your word. Let me give you a quick example. Oftentimes people may ask us to pray for them. They'd say a situation that they're going through and they invite you into it and hey, would you pray for me? And you say, yeah, I'll pray for you. Now, what if you're the type of person that would say, hey, yeah, I'll pray for you, but you don't actually pray for them? Maybe you didn't want to offend them. And so you're like, yeah, I'll pray for you, but you have no intention. In fact, you don't even want to pray for them. You may not even like that person and I'm not going to pray for you. If you're going to pray for somebody and you say that, then take the necessary steps to actually pray for that person. Whether you got to put a reminder in your phone. And better yet, why not pray for them right then and there? I remember in college, I was having a conversation with somebody and I asked for prayer. And the response to me was this, yeah, I'll pray for you if I remember. And I kind of looked at him like, what? What are you talking about? They're like, well, I don't want to promise you and then not live up to my word. So this kind of covers if, in fact, I do forget. And so this just helps me. So I'm like, what? We need to be men and women of our word. We need to live up to what we say. Jesus is saying this: say what you mean and mean what you say. Jesus is telling us that we need to have straightforward and clear and honest communication. Our words should reflect our intentions, and our actions should align with our words. This is like a parent who promises that they're going to go throw the ball with a kid. They tell them, hey, after work today, we're going to go out and we're going to throw the ball. Well, work ends and the kid comes, hey, you said we're going to throw the ball. You're like, yeah, I had something come up a little bit. I actually need to finish this. We'll do it after dinner. Well, dinner comes and kid's like, hey, are we going to throw the ball? And you're like, it's getting too late. The day kind of got away from me. We'll do it tomorrow. Well, the next day comes and, there's other reasons, there's other excuses, and it doesn't happen. Here's what happens to that kid. What they're learning over time is that you are not a person of your word. They will learn to distrust your word because you're not living up to what you say. When we're trying to create boundaries with our words, we need to also learn to respect the promises and words of others. Have you ever been asked to do something to change maybe a yes to a no? Or maybe it was to change a no to a yes. It's an awkward position to be put in. Someone is asking you to break your word. Somebody may ask you at your workplace to falsify a record. And they tell you, hey, this is actually going to be really beneficial for the company. So if you will actually do this, this is going to help us. And in fact, just for your effort on this, I'm going to give you a little bonus. So would you mind doing this? Well, that puts you in an awkward position to lie that your word will not be true. Other times we may say something like this to people where we ask them, hey, will you just make an exception just this one time? Please, just this one time. I promise it will never happen again. Just make this exception this one time. But the problem is this makes it harder to have boundaries in the future. Let's say you hire a contractor to remodel your bathroom and you come up with an agreed upon price. It's going to cost $5,000. This covers everything. It covers the tile, it covers the materials, and it covers all the labor. You make an agreement, you write it down, and you also have in that agreement that if on any reason it's going to go above this price, it needs to be agreed upon before the work is done. At the end of the project, the bathroom looks great. The contractor comes in with the bill, and it's a bill for $6,000. Wait a second, we agreed upon $5,000. It just ended up taking me longer. Materials were a little more expensive than I thought, and so, $6,000 is what we got to do. No. Be a person of integrity. Be a person who honors their word. You had it in writing, so you need to honor it. If the person misbid the project, that's not on you, that's on them. And so they need to be somebody who honors their word. Now, we serve a God who honors his word. Throughout the Bible, you can see lists of different promises that the Lord has made. For example, in Genesis 17, he makes a promise to Abraham that you will have a son through Sarah. And in fact, you will have so many descendants, it will be as numerous as the sand on the seashore. Another promise is when he promises the Hebrews that they will be set free from their slavery. And he sends a man by the name of Moses to set them free. And now on their journey to the promised land, they made some mistakes. So now they're sending it to the wilderness area. And in Deuteronomy 1, he promises that he will protect them, that he will guide them, that he will meet their needs and provide for them. So during that time in the wilderness, he provides them food to eat and water to drink. You see, God is faithful to his word. He's a person of integrity, and he's trustworthy. We need to learn to keep our word to others, to honor our commitments. Maybe you made a commitment at work that I will have this project done by this deadline on this day. Well, you need to honor that. You need to live up to that. You need to work towards that and get it done in the appropriate time. This last week, we had a men's night. Somebody asked me, hey, is there anything I can help with? It's food or setup. And I said, you know what? James is actually on food this week. I have no idea what James is making, but I can tell you that James is a man of his word and James can cook. So I don't have any worries about it whatsoever. Now, I can only do that because there's a history with James, because he's proven himself to me over and over again that he is a man of his word. Another way that we could honor our words to others is being punctual. Hey, you say to somebody, I'm going to be here at this time. Honor that. Show up on time. Now, I get it. There are times you get stuck in traffic. Hey, something happened. You're going to be late. I understand that happens. Call the person, shoot them a text, let them know what's going on. There was an emergency. I get that. But if it's not an emergency and it's just that you really needed to get up 15 minutes earlier, then that's on you. Be somebody who honors being punctual. We also need to be people that can maintain confidentiality, meaning that somebody trusted you with the secret or trusted you to pray for something. They wanted you to keep that here, but they brought you in because they want you to pray and believe with them. It's not your right to now go tell everybody else, tell them their business. No, be somebody who honors your word in maintaining confidentiality. We also need to be people that support our friends. When we tell our friends we're going to be there, that we show up and that we're there. Perhaps somebody asks you to move and you're like, yep, I'll be there Saturday. I'm going to be there at 8:00. Well, now it's 8:30 on Saturday and you're nowhere to be found. Your friend is texting you, they're calling you, and then you pick up and hey, you know what? I'm not actually going to be able to make it. No, let's be people who honor our word to others. Another way that we can keep our word is when we say we're going to volunteer, when we sign up for something, that we show up. We as a church, we use a system called Planning Center Online. It gives you an option, accept or decline. That's it, accept or decline. It means I'm going to be there or I'm not going to be there. Gives you the times that you're supposed to show up, what you're supposed to do, all of that. Can I just tell you, as a church, we can't function or operate without our volunteers. And one of the things that happens is on a Sunday morning is text messages start coming in. Hey, I'm not going to make it. Hey, this is going on. And here's what happens, especially in the area of kids ministry, which takes lots of volunteers. Those phone calls, those text messages start coming in. So then leadership has to start scrambling to get it done. How can we get people in place to cover all the different things that are happening and going on? Be somebody that honors your word. Accept or decline and be on time. Now, I get it. Hey, if there's a real emergency, your kid is sick, they're puking, please don't come. Here's how I know if somebody actually has a real reason, because they will say the reason, or they will say it in their text or phone call. If they don't, then I just assume that they're being flaky. Hey, maybe they stayed out too late last night and they don't want to come in today. Maybe they're just not feeling it today. Let's be people that we honor our word. Matthew chapter 5, verse 37. Just say a simple yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. How many times in your life have you said yes, but you needed to say no? How often have you said no when you really needed to say yes? So how do we determine whether we need to say yes or no to something? Well, it starts with our priorities. Are we putting boundaries with our priorities? Are we building those boundaries? Now, I can't tell you exactly what your priorities, exactly what your boundaries are going to be in your life, but I can tell you a couple that should be at the top of the list. It should be your relationship with God, and it should be your family. Those should be at the top of the list. Now, beyond that, that's up to you. Is that, hey, working hard? Or, hey, is that, being physically fit? Whatever it may be. What are your boundaries in life? And as you determine what those boundaries are, it gives you the freedom to now say yes to the things that align and no to the things that don't align. As we do this, it helps us. Because then when we have to say no to something, it doesn't actually give us guilt when we say no, because you know in your heart it doesn't align with the priorities and the things that you've set in place. Now, I also want to say this. When we say yes to something and it aligns with our priority, that's fantastic. You're doing the things that you need to do. So I also want to say this. This is going to take time. This is going to take practice to be people who honor our word, where our yes means yes and our no means no. You're going to mess up. You're going to make mistakes. But set those boundaries with your words. Let people know around you. Figure out what your priorities are so you can better say yes and no to things. We shouldn't have to swear on the name of something else. We should be people of integrity. Our word should mean something. What do you need to say yes to in life? Is it to your mental health? Is it to your physical health? Is it to your spiritual health? Is it to your relationships with your spouse or your kids? Is it finishing your education? Many years ago, when I was just become a youth pastor, I was also doing my master's degree. So I was working full-time, but going to college full-time as well. And I remember as I was looking at the different areas of my life, how am I going to be able to do all these things? And I realized that I just wasn't going to be able to. So for a time, I had to change some of my priorities. I knew that during this season that I was not going to be able to exercise because I just wasn't going to have any time. And so for 2 years, I didn't exercise. I didn't take care of my health because I was working full-time, I was going to school full-time, and I was trying to finish it. So 2 years later, a degree in hand and 20 pounds heavier, I was then able to reevaluate and get my priorities in line again with my physical health. Sometimes you got to say no so that you can say yes to things that are more important. What do you need to say no to in your life? Perhaps there's some peer pressure happening when people are like, hey, we should go do this. Hey, our family's going to do this. Hey, we're going out. We're going on this vacation. We're going to this trip. We're going to this concert. And yeah, we would love it if you're there. But let's say one of your boundaries right now is you're trying to financially get out of debt. And even though you want to, even though that it would be fun, even though that it's going to be a great experience, you decide, you know what, that's not going to help us reach our goals financially right now. And so we're going to have to say no. Sometimes we have to say no to the things so that we can say yes to the more important things. Another area of your life that you may have to say no to is bad relationships, toxic relationships, those relationships that are hurting you, those relationships that are hurting your mental health. They're giving you lots of stress and different things. You have to say no so you can say yes. Another one that a lot of us do is that we will overcommit ourselves. Yeah, I can be there at this time. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can take this extra project on. Yeah, I can be, at your house at this time. Yeah, and we begin to take so many things on in life that we're overextended and we can't do anything well. Sometimes we have to say no so we can say yes to the more important things. I pray that God gives you wisdom, that He gives you guidance on how you can be a person of your word. How you can be a man or a woman of integrity, that you don't have to invoke the name of something else or to swear by the name of something else, but to say what you mean and mean what you say. I pray that God gives you wisdom in identifying your priorities so that you can figure out, what do I need to say yes to and what do I need to say no? God, I pray that you would help us to establish healthy boundaries with our words. May our yes be yes and our no be no.